My ex offered me $500,000 to give up custody of my only daughter without a fight. My lawyer warned me not to sign it. I signed it anyway. I wrote my name on that line in a conference room that smelled like carpet cleaner while the man I used to be married to sat 4 feet away and watched me sign it. He didn't smile. He just looked at his lawyer, and something passed between them. The look two men give each other is that kind of look when you feel you have succeeded in your plan. 9 days later, we were in front of Judge Allen Whitfield. I sat with my hands flat on the table because if I didn't hold them down, they shook. Behind me, my mother, who had not spoken to me in 6 weeks, she came anyway. She sat in the 3rd row with her purse in her lap like she was at a funeral. And in a way she was, because as far as she knew, I had sold her granddaughter and there was no version of that she could forgive. Judge Whitfield read the agreement in silence. He was 71 years old. He had been doing family court for 26 of them. His face gave you nothing. Then he looked up. He looked at me. He looked at the signature. He looked at me again. And for 1 second, something crossed his expression that I can only describe as grief, and I understood exactly what he was seeing. A woman who had taken money for her child. That was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, and I want you to understand it fully. Then my lawyer stood. Your Honor, please turn to page 14. I watched my ex-husband's face across the aisle. Marcus Harrison, 44 years old, gray at the temples in the way that made people trust him, wearing the navy suit he wore for things he intended to win. And he smiled. He actually smiled. He thought I'd just sold our child. The judge turned the page. The room did that thing rooms do when nobody knows anything is wrong yet. Somebody's chair creaked. The court reporter's fingers kept moving and then stopped. The judge stopped reading. His expression changed. He looked over his glasses at my ex. Mr. Harrison, did you actually read this agreement before signing it? Marcus frowned. He glanced at his attorney, then back up. Of course. Then explain to me why page 14 states that this payment constitutes a voluntary admission that you believe yourself unfit to seek primary custody. End quote. The smile went off his face like someone had taken it. What? His attorney was already reaching for the copy on the table. I watched that man's hands. He flipped to 14 and I saw his eyes go left to right across one paragraph, and then stop, and go back, and read it again, and the color left his face in real time. I have never seen anything happen to a person's face that fast. My lawyer did not raise his voice. He never does. The clause was drafted by his own legal team, Your Honor. It appears to have been carried over from a prior settlement template. The language was never removed. Quote, the gallery erupted. Not loud. That courtroom whisper. 40 people breathing out at once. Marcus turned on his lawyer. You told me it was standard. Marcus, don't. You told me it was standard. The judge raised one hand and the room went quiet. Mr. Harrison. He took his glasses off, and I knew from 6 months of hearings that this was worse. You offered the mother of your child $500,000 to surrender custody. And in the same document, on a page you have just told me you read, you signed an acknowledgement that you are unfit to hold primary custody yourself. No, that's not what I meant. But it's exactly what you signed. I should have felt something. Triumph, maybe. I want to tell you, there was a moment in there where I felt nothing at all. There wasn't. I was too busy counting, because I knew what page 14 said. I had known for 11 months, and I knew that a clause in a contract does not decide who raises a 7-year-old girl, and any lawyer in that room who was paying attention knew it too. I was waiting for the judge to say the thing I'd been dreading since the day I built this. He said it 40 seconds later. He closed the agreement and set both hands on it. Counsel, I want to be very clear about something. This court does not award custody on the basis of a drafting error. Whatever this document says, it does not tell me who these people are. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked at me, and he held it longer, and I made myself look back. It tells me one of you was careless. It does not tell me either of you is fit. My lawyer started to speak. Your Honor, I'm ordering a full custody evaluation. home visits, both residences, interviews with the child, psychological assessment of both parents. We will reconvene in 5 weeks. 5 weeks. I had planned for 11 months, and I had not planned for 5 weeks. Marcus's attorney was on his feet immediately. Your Honor, given what's just been revealed about Miss Reyes accepting payment. Yes, the judge said. That's going in the evaluation too. And there it was. I'd built a trap so good it caught both of us. I turned around once before they took us out. My mother was still sitting in the 3rd row with her purse in her lap. She was looking at me the way you look at a stranger who has your face. She didn't know yet. Nobody did. Not my lawyer. Not the judge. Not the man across the aisle who was still staring at page 14 like it might change if he read it enough times. 11 months earlier, I had been a temp paralegal at a firm in Hartford, processing settlement templates for $18 an hour, and I had made one small change to a document that nobody would ever check. I just needed him to hire the right lawyers. And he did. To understand how I ended up signing that paper, let me take you back to 3 years ago, to the day I found out I had nothing. Not no money. I knew about the money. I mean nothing. Nothing on paper, nothing in my name, nothing a court would look at and call mine. We'd been married 9 years. Marcus ran a commercial real estate firm his father started, and I had been an office manager at a dental practice in Waterbury when we met. And 8 months after our wedding, he said the thing that sounded like generosity at the time. You don't have to work. Stay home with her. Let me do this part. Our daughter's name is Nora. She was 14 months old. I said yes. I want to be honest about that, because I have gone over it 10,000 times, and I keep landing in the same place. I said yes, because I wanted to. Because I got to be the one who was there when she said her first word, which was not mama, it was dog, and I laughed so hard I cried on the kitchen floor. Because those years were the best years of my life, and I would not trade them. Even now, even knowing what they cost me. But here is what nobody tells you. Every year I stayed home. I got smaller on paper. No income. No 401k. No references younger than a decade. The house was in his name because his father had co-signed it. The cars were leased through the company. Even my phone was on a business account. By the time I found the messages, I was a 38-year-old woman with a 9-year gap in her resume and $1,100 in a checking account he could see. I found them on a Tuesday. Not hidden. That's the part that still gets me. His tablet was on the kitchen counter, and a message came in while I was making Nora's lunch. And I looked at it the way you look at any notification, without thinking, and it said something I am not going to repeat. And it was from a woman named Sabrina Vaughn. I stood there with a butter knife in my hand for a long time. Nora said, "Mom, the crust." I cut the crust off. I gave her the sandwich. I sat down across from her and watched her eat it, and I felt the entire floor of my life go out from under me while I smiled at my kid. That's the first thing I want you to know about surviving something like this. You keep making the sandwich. I confronted him that night. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look particularly bothered, and that was worse than anger would have been, and he said a sentence I have thought about every day since. Let's not make this ugly. You'd lose. Not I'd win. You'd lose. He'd already done the math. I filed anyway. The first 6 months went exactly like he said they would. He hired Kessler Boyd Marchetti, which is the firm you hire in Connecticut when you want the other person to run out of money before you run out of motions. 41 lawyers. 3 floors of a glass building in Hartford. I had Danny Ruiz, who was 56 years old and worked out of a converted dental office with his cousin's name still on the sign, and who took my case for a third of what he should have charged because he'd known my father. Danny told me the truth on day 1, and I have always loved him for it. You're going to lose the temporary orders. Don't panic when it happens. It's a long game. I lost the temporary orders. Marcus got the house because moving Nora would be disruptive to the child. Marcus got primary residential custody during the school week because he had the stable residence. I got weekends and Wednesdays, and a support number calculated on an income I couldn't verify, and 30 days to leave a home I'd lived in for 9 years. I moved into a one-bedroom in Torrington with a stove that only worked on 2 burners. Nora slept in the bedroom. I slept on a pull-out in the living room for 11 months, and I told her I liked it better out there. She was 6. She believed me. Then, he started winning the way that actually hurts, which is not in a courtroom. He put Nora in a private school in Farmington. Beautiful campus. $22,000 a year. He did it without telling me, and by the time I found out, she'd already started, and the school was 40 minutes from my apartment in the opposite direction of everything. He bought her a horse. I am not exaggerating. He bought a 7-year-old a horse, boarded at a stable in Litchfield, and she named it Waffles, and she talked about waffles every single Wednesday for 4 months in the car on the way to a dinner I was buying with a coupon. I said, "That's amazing, baby." I meant it. That's the part people get wrong about this. I meant it. I was glad she had a horse. I just also sat in my car in the parking lot afterward for 20 minutes before I could drive. And then Sabrina moved in. Nora told me. Not Marcus. Nora, in the back seat, in the way kids deliver an atom bomb. Sabrina says I can call her whatever I want. I kept my eyes on the road. That's nice of her. She's really pretty, Mom. She is. Are you sad? I looked at my daughter in the rearview mirror, 7 years old, watching my face to see how she should feel. No, baby, I said. I'm good. I want you to understand the exact shape of what I was up against by month 8, because it wasn't a villain. If it were just a villain, I could have fought a villain. It was a better life. He had the house she grew up in and the school with the good art program, and the horse, and a woman who did her hair in braids before school. I had a pull-out couch and a 2-burner stove and a Honda with a check engine light that I had learned to ignore. There was a night, and I've never told anyone this, where I sat on the edge of that pull-out at 2 in the morning and did the math on the only question that matters. Is she better off with him? I sat there for a long time. That was the night I stopped trying to win the way Danny wanted me to win. Because Danny's strategy was patience and paperwork and the long game. And the long game assumes you can afford to play it, and I had $6,000 in a retirement account my grandmother left me, and no 4th act. The next morning I went to a staffing agency in Hartford and told them I'd take anything. They put me in a document processing pool. $18 an hour, no benefits, temp to nothing. I sat in a windowless room on the 4th floor with 6 other people and scanned, indexed, and reformatted settlement agreements for a firm's document management system. The firm was Kessler Boyd Marchetti. I want to be very careful about how I say this next part, because it matters. I did not plan it. I did not apply there. The agency sent me, and I said yes, because it was $18 an hour, and I would have said yes to anything. I found out on my 2nd day, when I saw the letterhead. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 11 minutes, and then I went back upstairs and I logged in. Nobody there knew who I was. Why would they? I was a temp with a lanyard. My name was on the case file as Reyes, my maiden name, which I'd taken back the month I filed. There were 400 people in that building. Nobody looks at the woman scanning documents. For 7 weeks, I processed settlement templates. Marital dissolution. Custody, asset division, hundreds of them. And what I learned in those 7 weeks is the thing nobody outside the law will ever tell you. They don't write these documents. They copy them. Every agreement that came through my hands was a previous agreement with the name swapped. Same headers, same numbering, same boilerplate. A junior associate pulls the closest match from the system, runs a find and replace, changes the numbers, and sends it up. The partner skims it. The client never reads past the money. I processed one in my 4th week. A settlement from 2019. A father who'd been in a bad place, who'd voluntarily stepped back from custody, and whose lawyers had written a paragraph acknowledging his own unfitness as protection against him coming back and reversing it later. Page 14. I read it 3 times. And then I did the only thing I have ever done in my life that I still cannot decide if I'm proud of. I saved it into the template library as a general use dissolution agreement, indexed under the search terms a junior associate would use when a client wanted to buy their way out of a custody fight fast. Then my contract ended, and I went back to my 2-burner stove, and I waited. 11 months. I did not tell Danny. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell one living person, because the second anyone knew, it stopped being a mistake his lawyers made and started being something I did. And if a judge ever heard that word "did," I would lose my daughter forever. So I kept the copy of that 2019 template in a manila folder under the passenger seat of my Honda. 11 months. Every Wednesday, every weekend. Driving Nora to dinner with that folder 6 inches from her feet. I never opened it once. And then, on a Thursday in March, Danny called me and said Marcus's attorneys had sent over a proposal and that he wanted me to sit down before he read it to me, and that the number was $500,000. I asked him one question. Danny, can you email me the PDF? 5 weeks. That's what the judge gave us, and I want to tell you what 5 weeks of a custody evaluation actually looks like, because it is not what you think. It is not a courtroom. Nobody makes speeches. It's a woman named Dr. Elaine Kovac who comes to your apartment with a legal pad and sits on your couch and asks where your daughter sleeps. She came to my place first. Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. I'd been cleaning since 4. I want to be honest about what she saw. She saw a 1-bedroom apartment with a pull-out couch made up with sheets, and a bedroom with a twin bed and a strip of glow stars on the ceiling I'd put up the first week we moved in. She saw a 2-burner stove. She saw a folding table with 2 chairs. She wrote for a long time. Then she said, "Miss Reyes, I have to ask you about the payment. I understand. You accepted $500,000 in exchange for surrendering custody of your daughter." I signed an agreement, yes. Why? And this is the moment. Right here. This is the part I'd been building toward for 11 months without ever letting myself picture it clearly, because if I pictured it, I'd know how bad it was. I could not tell her the truth. If I said I planted that clause, the evaluation ends, the agreement gets thrown out, and I get referred for fraud. If I said it was a trap, same thing. There was exactly one answer available to me, and it was the worst answer a mother can give. Because I was out of money, I said. She looked up. I had $6,000 and a lawyer working at half rate and a 9-year gap in my employment history. He has 41 attorneys. I was going to lose either way. I thought if I took the money, I could at least give her something. You believed you were going to lose. I knew I was going to lose. Dr. Kovac wrote that down. I watched her write it, and I knew exactly what it looked like on the page, and I let her write it, because the alternative was worse. She went to his house on Thursday. I know what she saw there, because I've seen it. 4 bedrooms in Farmington, with a finished basement and a yard that backs onto conservation land. Nora's room with the horse posters. Sabrina's hand on Nora's shoulder in the doorway. The way you'd photograph a family. The evaluation report came back 18 days later. Danny called me, and he did not sound like himself. Come to the office. I drove down. He had it on his desk, 41 pages, and he'd tabbed it, and he didn't hand it to me. He read me the part that mattered. Both parents demonstrate genuine attachment to the minor child. The father's residence offers material stability, educational continuity, and an established support structure. The mother demonstrates strong emotional attunement and consistent engagement despite significant resource constraints. However, the mother's decision to accept financial compensation in exchange for custodial rights raises substantive concern regarding her prioritization of the child's interests, and this evaluator is unable to fully resolve that concern based on the explanation provided. Recommendation: primary residential custody to the father. I sat in that chair and I did not move. Danny said, "It's a recommendation. Judges don't have to follow it. How often do they?" He didn't answer. Danny, how often do they follow it? Most of the time. So there it is. That's what my 11 months bought me. I built a trap. It worked perfectly. It caught him in front of a judge, and it cost me my daughter anyway, because the same document that proved he was unfit proved I was a woman who took money. You want to know what the smartest thing I ever did got me? Nothing. It got me nothing. I drove home, and I sat in the parking lot of my building, and I finally, after 11 months, opened the manila folder under the passenger seat. I looked at the 2019 template, the real one. The father's name blacked out by the firm's own redaction software, page 14. The paragraph I'd left in place, and I thought about burning it. I want to say something to you here, and then we'll keep going. If you're in the middle of something like this right now, if you're the one sitting in a parking lot doing math you don't want to do, I'd really like to hear from you in the comments. Not the funny ones, the real ones. There are people reading them who need to know they're not the only one on a pull-out couch at 2 in the morning. And if this story is holding you, hit the like button and subscribe, because it genuinely helps more people find it. Now, back to the parking lot. Because 11 days later, Sabrina Vaughn called me. I picked up because I didn't recognize the number. Is this Angela? Who is this? It's Sabrina. I said nothing. I know, she said. I know. Can you meet me? We met at a Panera in Avon because it was public and neutral, and neither of us could think of anywhere better. She was already there when I got in a booth in the back, and she was not what I expected. I expected the woman from the photos. What was sitting there was a 31-year-old with no makeup and her hair up and a coffee she wasn't drinking. She slid her phone across the table. I want you to read something. Sabrina, please, just read it. It was a text thread. Marcus to a man named Doug Whelan, who was his college roommate and best man at our wedding, dated across 4 months, starting 3 weeks after I filed. I read all of it. I'm going to give you 2 lines, and that's all, because the rest of it I still can't say out loud. I don't actually want the kids. I just don't want her to win. And then, 6 weeks later, Farmington's a nightmare, but the optics are good. Kovac's coming Thursday. I put the phone down. How long have you had this? Since February. February. I know. You've had this since February, and you let a court evaluator walk through that house. And Sabrina Vaughn looked at me across a Panera table and said the sentence that changed the whole shape of this story. I'm pregnant. I sat back. 4 months, she said. I told him in April. He said all the right things, and then 2 nights later I heard him on the phone with Doug, and he said, and her voice did something here. He said it's handled. Handled. He'd scheduled it. He'd already scheduled it. He never asked me. Neither of us said anything for a while. So this isn't for me, I said finally. No. You want me to have that file because you're getting out and you want him to have a track record before you have to fight him yourself. Yes. I respected that more than I can tell you. She didn't dress it up. She didn't tell me she'd seen the light. She was a woman doing exactly what I'd done, which was calculating from a position of no power and playing the only card she had. There's a problem, I said. You know what happens if you hand this over. He knows it's you. I know. He'll come after you in your own case, every hour of it. He'll say you stole his property. He'll say you're unstable. He'll put you through what he put me through, and he'll have more money than you. I know. Then why? And she said, because I watched what you did in that courtroom, and I thought you'd sold your kid. I didn't move. Everybody thought that, she said. I sat there and I thought, that's a woman who took the money. And then I got home, and I watched Marcus laugh about it. He laughed. Angela. He said the hard part was over. She wrapped both hands around the coffee she wasn't drinking. And I thought about that woman on the pull-out couch that Nora talks about. Nora talks about your couch. She thinks it's fun. I had to look at the window for a second. So no, Sabrina said. It's not for you. But I'm not going to sit in a house he bought and let you lose her because you were too broke to keep her. I called Danny from the car. He listened to all of it without interrupting, which is his tell. And then he said, Angela, sit still for a second. I need to think about how we get it in. Get it in? We can't just hand a judge a stack of stolen text messages. Opposing counsel will move to exclude, and they'll probably win. She had no authorization to access his device. She lives there. Living somewhere isn't authorization. A long pause. There's one way. If she comes in herself, not as an exhibit, as a witness. I sat with that. Because if she came in as a witness, she wasn't a piece of paper anymore. She was a pregnant 31-year-old woman with no lawyer, sitting in a chair, getting cross-examined by Kessler Boyd Marchetti about her sexual history and her mental health and her motives, on the record, permanently, in a case she'd have to live inside for the next 18 years. I could win my daughter with that. I called her back that night. Sabrina, before you say yes, I need you to hear exactly what they'll do to you. And I told her, all of it, every single thing they would do, because I had lived it and she hadn't, and because a woman who's about to hand you her life deserves to know the price in advance. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What time do I need to be there?" We reconvened on a Tuesday in May. Judge Whitfield had the evaluation in front of him. Marcus had a new suit and a new posture. Relaxed, the posture of a man who has already read the recommendation and knows what it says. Danny called Sabrina Vaughn as a witness, and I watched the entire right side of that courtroom stop breathing. Marcus turned around in his seat. She was already walking up the aisle. She didn't look at him. She was wearing a gray dress and flat shoes, and she'd put her hair up, and she was 4.5 months along, and you could see it, and I know for a fact that half the people in that room did the math on the spot. She was sworn in. She sat down, and she looked at the judge and not at anyone else the way I'd told her to. Danny took 20 minutes. He didn't rush. He established who she was, where she lived, when she moved in, the phone, whose account it was on, which was Marcus's business account, which meant she was a named user, which meant Danny had a fighting argument on access. Then he had her read the messages into the record. You could hear the HVAC. She got to, "I don't actually want the kids. I just don't want her to win." And Judge Whitfield's pen stopped moving. Not dramatically. It just stopped. And it stayed stopped for the rest of it. She got to Kovacs coming Thursday. And then Danny asked one more question, and it was the question I hadn't known he was going to ask. "Miss Vaughn, were you present in the home during Dr. Kovacs' evaluation visit?" "Yes." "Was there anything unusual about the household in the days preceding that visit?" Marcus's lawyer was up. "Objection? Vague." "I'll allow it." Sabrina said, "He hired someone." "Explain." "He hired a woman for 3 days, a child behavior consultant. She came Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and she coached him on what to say, how to sit with Nora, what to have in the fridge." She swallowed. "There's a bookshelf in Nora's room. It went up on Tuesday. It's screwed into the drywall with the wrong anchors because he did it fast. It's still there. You can see the holes he covered. I heard someone in the gallery say, 'Oh my God,' out loud. Then the cross. They went at her for 50 minutes, exactly the way I said they would, and worse in places. Her employment history, her prior relationship, whether she'd been prescribed anything, whether she was angry because she was pregnant, whether she understood she could be liable. And this is what I want to tell you about Sabrina Vaughn. She did not cry. She did not get defensive. Every question, she waited a beat and answered it flat. And the flatter she got, the worse it looked for the man who'd sent them at her. The last question was, "Miss Vaughn, isn't it true you're doing this because you want custody leverage in your own future case?" And she said, "Yes." The lawyer waited for more. There wasn't any more. "Yes," she said again. "And everything I read you is still true." Judge Whitfield ruled from the bench, which Danny told me afterward he has done maybe 4 times in 26 years. Primary residential custody to me. Every school night. Alternating weekends to Marcus, supervised for the first 90 days, pending a second evaluation. The $500,000 agreement voided in full as against public policy, with the payment ordered returned. And then he said something that wasn't in the ruling. He took his glasses off, and he looked at Marcus for a long moment, and he said, "Mr. Harrison, in my courtroom, people lose custody all the time. Most of them lose because they're struggling. You are the first man in some years to lose it because you weren't struggling at all. You had every advantage available to a parent in this state, and you used them to construct an appearance." He put the glasses back on. "Your daughter is going to read this transcript someday. Consider that." I don't remember standing up. I remember my mother in the third row. She'd come every single day for 5 weeks, and she hadn't spoken to me once. And when the judge said primary residential custody to the mother, she made a sound I had never heard my mother make, and she put both hands over her face. I got to her in the aisle. She grabbed my arms hard enough to leave marks. "I thought you sold her," she said. "Angela, I thought you sold her." "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" And that's the question, isn't it? I picked Nora up from school that Friday. She got in the back seat and put her backpack on the floor, and she didn't know yet. Marcus and I had agreed, through lawyers, to tell her together on Sunday. We drove. She said, "Mom, why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird. You're being weird." I pulled into the parking lot of my building, the Honda with the check engine light, the 2-burner stove upstairs and the pull-out couch and the glow stars. I turned around in my seat and I looked at my 7-year-old, and I reached under the passenger seat and I took out the manila folder. I want to explain what was in my hand. It was a settlement agreement from 2019 with the names redacted, a father who'd stepped back, a paragraph on page 14 written by his own lawyers to protect a child from him, and a woman making $18 an hour in a windowless room on the 4th floor who read that paragraph 3 times and who saved that document into a template library under the exact search terms a junior associate would use if a rich man came in and said, "I want to pay her to go away, and I want it fast." I didn't forge anything. I didn't alter a word. I didn't send it to anyone. I put a loaded document on a shelf where I knew a lazy man would reach, and then I waited 11 months for him to reach. Nora said, "What's that?" I looked at the folder. If I ever tell her, it won't be for a long time. Not because I'm ashamed, because there's no version of it a child can hold. Someday she'll be 25, and she'll ask me how it really happened, and I'll tell her the truth, which is that I never lied, and I never had to, because the man who signed that paper didn't read it. He'd never read anything, not the school forms, not the pediatrician's notes, not the agreement. He didn't read page 14 for the same reason he didn't know Nora was scared of the dark. He didn't think the details were his job. "It's nothing, baby," I said. I got out and put it in the dumpster behind the building and got back in the car. Then I turned around again, and I said, "Hey, how would you feel about sleeping here every night?" She thought about it. "Would I get the bed?" "You'd get the bed. Where would you sleep?" "On the couch." "Forever?" "For a while." And my daughter said, "Okay, but sometimes can we switch because the couch is better?" She meant it. She's 7, and to her that pullout was never a sacrifice. It was the fun part, and I had spent 3 years thinking I was failing her with it. I laughed until I couldn't see. Sabrina had her daughter in October. She named her Ray. She lives 11 minutes from me now, and Nora babysits sometimes, which is a sentence I could not have written 3 years ago. Marcus has his weekends. He shows up. He's better than he was, and I'm not going to pretend that isn't partly because a judge is watching, and I'm also not going to pretend it doesn't count. I went back to school. I'm 2 years into a paralegal certification, which everyone finds funny, and it is funny. Here's the last thing. Everybody in that courtroom watched me sign a paper and thought I'd given up. My mother thought it. My lawyer thought it. A judge with 26 years on the bench looked at me with grief in his face and thought it. I let all of them, because the loudest person in the room is almost never the one in control. Sometimes the quietest person is just waiting for everybody else to finish talking. Silence isn't weakness. Half the time, it's the only weapon a person has left, and the people who underestimate you are the ones who never see it coming. Marcus never underestimated me because I was weak. He underestimated me because he never once, in 9 years of marriage, read all the way to the end of anything. If this story got to you, tell me in the comments what you'd have done in that conference room with a pen in your hand. I read them. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe, because there's another coming next week. Thank you for listening.